You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Friday the 27th of July. Illegal immigrants in money exchange fraud. Anti-fascist groups raise the banner for the IRA in Liverpool. It has started. The first Olympic athlete has asked for asylum. Euronews today with Griffin MEP. Syrian Air Force trying to quell rebels to end killing. Wife of Chinese official accused of murder of European businessman. Thought for the day, how our schools have changed. Finally, it is an ant's life. UK news. 2 illegal immigrants who conned £50,000 from customers in their corner shop are facing a prison sentence. Syed Bukhari and Siam Assem came to Britain illegally, set up a corner shop and opened a money exchange inside it in the county of Gloucestershire. They made up phony exchange rates to get more customers and creamed that too. Bukhari and Assem came to Britain as visitors and overstayed their welcome. Between the two of them there are over 20 charges of fraud. The so-called anti-fascist march in Liverpool on the 21st of July by the James Larkin Society has opened a can of worms about the IRA. The Irish have always had a large presence in Liverpool and there are worries that the Marxist unions will link up with a newly formed IRA group from Ireland under the banner of being anti-fascist. The JLS group issued the all-encompassing liberal statement. The march and rally on the 21st of July was an opportunity for trades unionists, members of all our Liverpool's diverse communities and all the progressive groups to unite in opposition against the threat from these racist and fascist groups. Apparently the Queen shaking hands with Martin McGuinness set the ball rolling for quasi-approval amongst the more ignorant amongst us, and the Socialist March featured a band known to have sympathies with the IRA. One World at 8 reporter based in Liverpool commented, "Britain is not against the Irish people, just the IRA and its supporters. The socialists in Liverpool would do anything to cause conflict, to divide the indigenous people in the UK and Europe, so they will have more success with multiculturalism." The first Olympic runner has run into a police station in Leeds claiming asylum. He apparently disappeared from his team when they were moving to London. He is unnamed but in his early 20s from East Africa. A World at 8 reporter stated, "He is running for gold, isn't he? This will be the first of many and most will go unreported because this is what we nationalists said would happen and we must never be seen to be right." Now we have the Euronews with Nick Griffin MEP. But before I hand you over for Nick's input, and on a note about the Alliance Conference, I'm keeping a promise I made. Clive Jefferson would officially like to thank Pat Harrington for giving him the very last blackcurrant cheesecake pudding which was his. Clive really did appreciate the sacrifice that Pat made and enjoyed it immensely.
The big news this week in connection with the British National Party and the crisis-struck European Union is of course the fantastic first British conference of our Alliance of European National Movements. This was held at the start of the week in a lovely hotel on the Wirral, a couple of miles from the splendid city of Chester in my northwest constituency. Several of our continental guests took the opportunity to visit Chester and were very impressed by the walks around its picturesque walls and with the half-timbered houses and shops of the Rose. And, I'm very pleased to be able to tell you, they were every bit as impressed with our conference. It wasn't just the first-class venue. The subject and content of the presentations was also spot on. We had a fine speech from Front National MEP Bruno Gollnisch, who sent the warmest best wishes to the conference from our alliance member, Jean-Marie Le Pen, the man who first pointed out the need for an alliance of nationalists to help us exchange information, ideas, warnings about the undemocratic manoeuvrings of our opponents, and new ways to win. My Hungarian comrade, Bela Kovac of Jobbik, was unable to attend due to a court case in Budapest, but I've told him that his replacement, Jobbik's international press officer, Georgina Bernath, is such a stunner that, as far as the men of the BNP are concerned, he can send her instead of coming himself every time from now on. Our own contributors included Clive Jefferson, who is much less attractive, whose analysis of the proposals to create a pan-European party list was complemented by Bruno Gollnisch on having told him several things about the plan that he hadn't been aware of. A PowerPoint presentation about working with local communities by our young Scottish super activist, Thomas Imrie, was also very well received. My own contribution was another PowerPoint presentation using pictures and key facts to expose and explain the sinister forces behind the innocuous-sounding International Civil Liberties Alliance. As I hope you will see when we put this presentation up on BNP TV shortly, not only did the ICLA's Chris Knowles and Anne Marchini found the English Defence League, but their group is a key link between the Zionist Front British Freedom Group and the network of extremely well-funded neocon lobbying organisations which dragged America, and thus Britain, into the futile and ruinously expensive wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. There really is blood on these people's hands. This was another of the talks we laid on which various of our guests, who came not only from Hungary and France, but also Belgium, Spain, Italy and Poland, said they found particularly new and useful. Footage from the whole conference will be edited and presented on the Alliance's new website and on our own as soon as possible. In the meantime, you can already get a glimpse of it with some short interviews with foreign delegates and myself on BNP TV. And I hope very much that you will not only watch my speech about the attempt to hijack nationalism, but also spread the word about this very dangerous development and what we can do to oppose the warmongers and their civic nationalist puppets. One of the things we've already been working on for several months now is to try to strengthen our links with a large number of very genuine young people who've been involved by the activities of the EDL, but who are now waking up to the serious failings of its leadership and the money bags behind them. This process is furthest advanced in Scotland, where members of the EDL and our own activists are building up a tremendously productive working relationship. This appears now, however, to have attracted the unwelcome attention of the powers that be in Alex Salmond's third-rate Tartan Soviet. As I record this evening, 11 true patriots have been arrested on the word of an SNP Muslim and are set to be held in prison over the entire weekend. This is the police response to our plans this Saturday for a series of activities and demonstrations in the town of Dalkeith, where local people are furious over the way the council and the police have imposed the brutal rapist Robert Green, who left a young student close to death after raping her in the famous Roslin Chapel, on their community. With demonstrations of hundreds of people, the fact that the British National Party is the only political force on the side of the community, and that all the other parties are on the side of a sex beast who has admitted that he feels the urge to rape again, it's all too easy to see why the politically correct police want us out of the way. But we will not let them trample our freedom and democracy in this way, nor will we stand by while the powers that be subject a whole town to the endless terror of having a brutal sex attacker prowling the streets. It's time to fight back against such grotesque injustice. So I will be in Dalkeith tomorrow, and we're calling on everyone who can possibly make it to come to Glasgow Sheriff's Court at 10:30 on Monday morning. If you can't come, please decide right now to do something this weekend in your own way, in your own area, to help in our fight for freedom and justice.
Thank you, Nick, for your usual excellent input. World news. President Assad, Syria's leader, is said to be using his aircraft to crush a rebellion in the industrial heartland of his country. The city of Aleppo has been the scene of the latest fighting in another effort by rebel forces to oust the president. The US, as usual, have condemned the action and, along with the UN, are clearly on the "we want a war" footing, but many feel that it is not the West who should intervene. A World at 8 spokesperson commented, "There is no doubt that the UN propaganda machine will do all it can to drag Britain into another illegal war, or at least supply armaments to the rebel forces, as in Libya, to put in place Muslim fundamentalist rule. The Syrian Air Force is trying to stop the rebel opposition and bring to an end the killing of its own people," another reporter commented. The official Xinhua news agency reports Bo's wife, Gu Gili, and the employee, Zhang Sejun, recently were charged with intentional homicide in the death of Neil Haywood, who had business dealings with the couple. Gu is the wife of disgraced official Bo Xilei, and this scandal has upset the communist regime considerably. Xinhua said Gu and Zhang are suspected of poisoning Haywood, who was found dead in a hotel last November. Chinese authorities initially attributed his death to a heart attack or excessive drinking. The trial continues. 2 Turkish soldiers have been killed in a bomb attack. The attack took place when a bomb was detonated by remote control and blew their car into the air. The attack happened in the southeast region of Turkey, which is mainly under Kurdish control. A third soldier and one civilian were also wounded in the attack, which occurred near the town of Lichi in Diyarbakir province. Thought for the day: how education has changed for the worse. One of the recent headlines that caught my eye was the front page of last Thursday's Daily Mail, in which it stated that 90 primary pupils are sent home each day for attacks in class. I cannot speak internationally, but we seem to have gone during the last 40-odd years from vaguely goofy private and public schools to icons for the rich and not necessarily famous nouveau riche. The small village schools, which were the backbone of the countryside, are no longer there in most cases. The inner city state schools, which were always considered rough but efficient and are now just free havens for most of our immigrant children. The grammar schools, which were the joy of many a parent with very little money but with high hopes for their offspring, are now just massive comprehensives, which, as we all know, are for the most part completely out of control. But this news about primary schools is truly horrific. In my understanding, primary school intake is just after the infant school and deals with young children, not the bane of teachers everywhere, the teenage monsters and the truly out of control idiots. But apparently, according to stats last year, these primary schools expelled nearly 300 pupils aged 11 and under for violence and handed out almost 17,000 suspensions. This means that on any given school day in 2010-2011, 90 pupils were ordered out of school for attacking a member of staff or a fellow pupil. Primary schools were also forced to bar pupils more than 10,000 times for persistent disruption and 6,390 times for verbal abuse. Now this is a national disgrace. All the previous Labour government's bleatings about educating the black children up to our standard and Cameron's education for all is useless. How can we educate or think of educating children who are supposed to be uneducatable if we cannot start early with our own children? My first two children started in a village school and then went on for a very short time to old grammar schools, which had just been made comprehensive, unfortunately. Luckily we acquired some funds and they went to public and private schools. My daughter stayed in that system and acquired a scholarship when funds went south, but my eldest son had to go back to the comprehensive system, and believe me, the difference in manners and actual work ethic was vastly noticeable. My youngest son had to go through the state system, and the ironic thing is he is the one who would have benefited most from the public school training for life. The homework ethic is kick-started at an early age in the public and private schools. At the ages of 12 to 13 they have 2 hours homework every night, and in some schools it is supervised. In the average comprehensive system they do not have any homework until they have decided which subjects they will take with their CSEs. I was begging for my youngest son to actually have some work to do, but was told the teachers were unable to do marking for such high numbers of pupils. Now whether this has changed or not I do not know, but work aside, it is the behavioural problems that are affecting our schools now. As you know, I put most of our degenerative problems down to immigration and the multicultural society, and our education system doesn't escape this either. In certain cities in the UK there are huge amounts of immigrant children or children of immigrants living here. In one school in the north, 90% of the children are Muslim. These numbers will never go down, in fact they will increase. In London, vast areas are dominated by Indians, Africans and Arabs, and all peoples in between. They have children and they will enjoy the benefits of the free education that we in this country seem to give out, often to the detriment of our own children. It would be interesting to see the ethnic mix of the figures attributed to the primary schools. Is it all our own white children out of control, or is it influences from the non-white communities? It is well known that in areas where there is a heavy black presence, the English language and culture is dying, and it has given birth to Wiggers, or rather kids who are white but want to be black. In areas with a heavy Muslim presence, I would think religious and cultural intimidation is more of a problem than bad manners or disruption. It is apparently spoilt middle-class children who are as much of a problem as the challenged families. Now this can cover all ethnicities. The spoilt middle class can be Asian or African, the challenged can be white or West Indian. The problem is that nowadays, with all the human rights crap, teachers cannot be teachers. They must be diversity-ridden robots who treat these brats like friends. Now bear in mind most of these kids from an early age have been brought up with multiracial tolerance at home, and the fact that if you are liberal you can say or do anything you like to anyone in authority because they're either old, stupid, racist or have their hands tied by their own unions. There is no discipline. There is no propaganda of discipline for children at all. Parents are not allowed to discipline their own children without going into the realms of abuse and being reported. Children know they can get away with murder, and in some cases when older they do just that. I'm not suggesting bringing back caning, but a good wallop on the odd occasion would do the trick, since respect is not on the books at all. In this country no one respects anyone unless they are on the telly or in the football field. The last of our cultural mores went out in the 80s, when the pride for our families, our culture, our children and our country was negated and stifled in favour of multiculturalism, globalism and a massive dose of wantisms. Gradually, very gradually, we have police who cannot police. We have teachers who cannot teach. We have medics who cannot speak English. We have a border agency that does bugger all. And we have successive governments who spend huge amounts of money abroad and pay strangers over here whilst our elderly starve. We also have huge cutback in our armed forces whilst we spend billions on entertaining the world with the sodding Olympics. These youngsters or their parents should be made to pay with money or time, if necessary, for in some cases sexual misconduct, although the schools are at fault there for teaching very young children how to be a homosexual and have fun, or ignoring sexual grooming in the playgrounds for fear of being racist. There is so much wrong with our education systems now, but all the government is harping on is diversity and opportunity. For whom and how? First, back to the basic principles of teaching, which are knowledge and discipline for a start. And finally, suicide bomber termites. Oh, I can't say it. Suicide bomber termites. They've got to be Muslim. No, I mustn't. A new form of weaponry has been discovered in the insect world. The first of its kind in discovery, insect enthusiasts have discovered that termites are a cut above the rest. As you will see with many programs, the termites always get the raw deal from invading ant colonies, but not the newly discovered termites, oh no. The new termites are packed with crystals, waiting for any attack on their termite mound. Once they are attacked, they commit suicide by exploding their crystals, showering their enemy with shrapnel. This presenter says ants are fascinating, and indeed all insects are wonderful creatures. We humans can earn a lot from their world, the dedication and their loyalty to the survival of their own species. Never stamp on an ant. And a word for animal lovers everywhere during this hot spell: do leave fresh water out for your domestic pets. They can't turn a tap on, can they? You have been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozart, and I and the team at Radio Britain wish you all a very happy and safe weekend. Hands with Martin McGuinness set the ball rolling for quasi-approval amongst the more ignorant amongst us, and the Socialist March featured a band known to have sympathies with the IRA. One World at 8 reporter based in Liverpool commented, "Britain is not against the Irish people, just the IRA and its supporters. The socialists in Liverpool would do anything to cause conflict, to divide the indigenous people in the UK and Europe, so they will have more success with multiculturalism." The first Olympic runner has run into a police station in Leeds claiming asylum. He apparently disappeared from his team when they were moving to London. He is unnamed, but in his early 20s, from East Africa. The so-called anti-fascist march in Liverpool on the 21st of July by the James Larkin Society has opened a can of worms about the IRA. The Irish have always had a large presence in Liverpool, and there are worries that the Marxist unions will link up with a newly formed IRA group from Ireland under the banner of being anti-fascist. The JLS group issued the all-encompassing liberal statement. The march and rally on the 21st of July was an opportunity for trades unionists, members of all our Liverpool's diverse communities and all the progressive groups to unite in opposition against the threat from these racist and fascist groups. Apparently the Queen shaking hands. A World at 8 reporter stated, "He is running for gold, isn't he? This will be the first of many, and most will go unreported, because this is what we nationalists said would happen, and we must never be seen to be right. Now we have the Euro News with Nick Griffin MEP. But before I hand you over for Nick's input, and on a note about the Alliance Conference, I'm keeping a promise I made. Clive Jefferson would officially like to thank Pat Harrington for giving him the very last blackcurrant cheesecake pudding which was his. Clive really did appreciate the sacrifice that Pat made and enjoyed it immensely.
You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. In nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Friday the 27th of July. Illegal immigrants in money exchange fraud. Anti-fascist groups raise the banner for the IRA in Liverpool. It has started. The first Olympic athlete has asked for asylum. Euro News today with Nick Griffin MEP. Syrian Air Force trying to quell rebels to end killing. Wife of Chinese official accused of murder of European businessman. Thought for the day, how our schools have changed. Finally, it is an ant's life. UK News. 2 illegal immigrants who conned £50,000 from customers in their corner shop are facing a prison sentence. Syed Bukhari and Siam Assem came to Britain illegally, set up a corner shop and opened a money exchange inside it in the county of Gloucestershire. They made up phony exchange rates to get more customers and creamed that too. Bukhari and Assem came to Britain as visitors and overstayed their welcome. Between the two of them there are over 20 charges of fraud.